Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle. I'm Tamera Loerzel, and with me is my partner, Renee Moelders. Thanks for being with me, Renee.
Good to be here, Tamera.
And we are here to talk about one of our favorite topics, probably. I know we have a lot, but one of them is remote and flex strategies. And it's timely because we're about to launch our Anytime, Anywhere work survey that we do in the profession with accounting and consulting firms and CPA firms. And so we'll get into a little bit more about what that is. But as we have been working with firms, and one of the things that's been coming up quite a bit is we need to get alignment on our remote strategies. And there's a little bit of maybe mixed messages happening. There's a little bit of what's next. How do we balance this return to the office initiative with how do we work and really support, flexible work arrangements, remote, working anywhere. And so we've been studying it for years. And then we publish a report, biannual report that we call the Anytime Anywhere Work Survey. And we share what firms are doing so that you as HR professionals, firm leaders, partners can talk about what is our philosophy around remote strategies and flex strategies, and what should we be doing next. So we've been studying it and we're pretty excited about it and want to share some of the highlights that we're seeing this year that are maybe top topics and some of the things that we'll be investigating in the survey, but also for you to be thinking about what are you doing in these areas. So Renee, maybe I'll just let you talk about the survey for a moment and maybe a little bit more details about that. And then we can get into some of the things that we're seeing around remote and flex strategies.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tamera. And I'm so excited to be here to talk about it. It is something we are really passionate about. We've been doing this since 2014 and really unofficially since 2012. And it all came out of wanting to help our clients figure this out. And clients were coming to us and asking us questions like, what should we be doing? And how should we be supporting our team members? And so this will be our 7th version of the survey. And we study remote work practices. We study flexible work practices, so flex of time and flex of place. We also talk about remote service. And then we really get into the cultural aspects and get into where you were, Tamera, which is getting aligned as a leadership team. And that's something that's increasingly been a part of the survey the last couple of times, and maybe even more important this year than any year in the past, because we are seeing a lot of disparity and confusion. And so we want firms to have this opportunity, first of all, like you said, to learn from other firms and see what others are doing and benchmark. But then also study this data, like submit their data and then study it and say, where should we be? Like where are we and where do we want to go with this? And really, ideally, organizations would be asking themselves that question every year. What are the 2 or 3 things that we want to adjust or tweak or do better related to these remote and flex practices this year? So the survey is an opportunity to do that. So a couple of big things, Tamera, before we get into specific questions and things we're interested in, 2 really big things that are happening with the survey this time around. First of all, historically, we've asked for 1 input per firm, and that's usually been done by the HR leader or the firm administrator or the managing partner. But this year, a little bit of a shift. We're still going to ask for that 1 input for the firm, firm leadership survey, and that will be familiar to people who have done it in the past. But then there's going to be a second path, and that will be for anyone in the firm. And the point behind that is it's a completely different set of questions and it's from a different lens. And we really want to understand for team members, how are they seeing flex and remote inside their organization? What do they think are the opportunities for their organization? Where could they do better? Where could things improve? And how does that flex and remote impact their engagement? Because I think that's a big question for leadership teams, Tamera, like, does this really matter? Do we have to do this? I mean, return to office, you mentioned it. So leaders might say like, well, come on, do people really care about it that much? And so we wanted to get some data points and some information. So that's going to be new this year. And we want to be sure firms know about that and help us get the word out, because we would love it if our HR leaders here on the line would do the survey And they would also ask everybody in their firm to complete the survey too, the team member survey. So any thoughts on that, Tamera, before I dive into the other big shift?
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think the only thing I would add is we want to just compare viewpoints.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we're going to look at is, what are the leaders saying versus what are the team members saying, and say, how do we close maybe some of that gap or get more aligned in our viewpoints, not just at the partner level or leadership level, but with what our team is expecting and wanting. And I think that's important.
Yeah. And we do expect there to be some gaps, Tamera. We're pretty sure about that. So the other shift is that historically we've just kind of given all this data away. We've just, for anyone who was interested in the data, we made it public. And so the change this year is to get the full survey report, you're going to need to participate in the survey. Now, we will publish widely to anyone an executive summary, but if you want those data points, we need firms to participate. Right. So just an FYI, and we're definitely going to have that in all of our communications, and we want to get the word out there, like get your data in the survey, that firm leadership part of the survey, so that you can have access to the full data set.
Yes, perfect. Awesome. Well, and I think, Renee, we've been, seeing this last, 6 months, year and a half, that firms are really at a crossroads. And for sure, maybe the last 6 months, we've been hearing from firm leaders that, we really need to figure out where we're headed, with remote. It's been interesting over the years, the history of doing the survey, but also we're a completely remote and hybrid team. We have been for our 24 years, of being in business. So we all work remote from our homes when we're in the office, and then hybrid in person, et cetera, at conference or client meetings, et cetera. And so we've been Pied Pipers of this for a long time. And we've watched the shift or these crossroads happen. First of all, one of the messages, we would be talking to firm leaders about is stop mandating Saturdays. Stop requiring certain periods or certain days of the week, especially during our peak periods, and focus more on how do we get the work done and when can people get the work done. And now we've got over that hump, the change management curve. We've got over that. Or you said client service, Renee, and we would talk about how can we do more of our audit work remote. We have the data, we have the information. We don't have to be so linear about it. It would help us with scheduling. And that was like a big uproar. And then, started to see some firms doing it. And then guess what happened? The pandemic happened and we all had to do it remote. And so now we see, gosh, we can do it anywhere. It doesn't take away from those in-person meetings and client meetings. We're more strategic about them. And so what's next? And this return to office that we've mentioned a couple of times is, one of the things people are grappling with. And part of it is you have to say, how are we managing our people, which we're getting asked to come and train and talk to our managers and our partners about how do we manage people remotely? How do we create that culture? How do we measure results? And what's the difference of them being in person versus not in person or in the office? And what are the differences that people are going to receive, by that? And so we have to really look at, what is our philosophy here and how do we appeal to that next gen and get aligned to that? So I don't have some haves and some have nots. I can work remote or have flexible hours if I work for Jen, but if I work for Renee, I don't. Renee's like, nope, you have to be in the office. You have to, be at these meetings, et cetera. And so we have to get, really clear about that. And so that's one of the things we've been gathering data about is, what is our philosophy? What is our requirement? Why are we requiring it in the first place? What is it, happening? And then we're going to get that team perspective that Renee talked about. So I know that's one of the big topics that, we're going to address in the survey, Renee. And I know you've got a few others if you want to share those as well.
Yeah. And before I go on, Tamera, return to office, you said unclear. Probably like one of the things we're wondering about is, are there firms who haven't really clarified their stance on that? And so that shows up in the team member answer options because we're asking that question, like you said, from both sides. So what does the firm say about return to office, and then asking the team? And we expect there to be some disparity there because we don't really think leaders are on the same page. It is different depending on which department you work in or, which job you're on. And then also, like, I just haven't heard or no one's told me what to do. And right. So I feel this pressure, but I'm just not sure.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting to take a look at. One of the other new terms that we came up with or we came across this year is this idea of proximity bias, and we didn't develop that. So that's a terminology that's out there in the HR space around this idea of, if I'm close to you, then perhaps you're going to favor me. And so that means, like, we work together in the office. And so we're wondering about that, what that looks like. And we're asking that question, I believe, just from the team member side. And so the idea there is, do you feel like some leaders in your firm demonstrate a proximity bias, that there are better opportunities if you're in the office versus working somewhere else? Or if you're working at the same time as those leaders versus a different time? So we're interested to see what that looks like and introduce that terminology to our HR leaders and the profession at large and start having a conversation about that. And Tamera, we've been talking about it through a different lens, because we've been saying all along, you should be able to have any career that you want and not necessarily have to work in the office. You can develop business, you can manage people, you can manage teams. So all of this is possible. And we know some firms are doing it, but we also know that some of us are still stuck on that idea of, well, they'll have to have a back office job. If they're going to be, if they want to be remote, fine, they can stay with us, but we're going to have to completely change their role. And we say, why? Let's, really dig into the pieces and parts of that and figure it out. So we're interested to kind of expand that conversation through this idea of proximity bias.
Yeah, perfect. And tied to that, you mentioned it, Renee, is this idea of, career progression. And can I be a partner? Can I be a part-time partner? Can I be a remote partner? Can I have flexibility in what my role is? And like you said, we have seen firms, have success with that. And there was just an article published in Accounting Today, I don't know if it's last week or the week before, about remote partners. We could drop the link in the comments here for you, and you could, read about that. But that is going to be limiting, in our opinion, if we don't figure out how do we have people progress all the way up to partner. And what does that look like? And how do we be creative about that? And how, again, comes back to, how am I managing people? How am I managing my clients? How am I developing business? And, what are the expectations around that? And then how am I able to deliver that in some kind of, flexible arrangement that I might have? And, of course, if it's flexible arrangement like part-time, less hours, less production, then, we would have to adjust, compensation. But if it's, I'm a full partner, I'm managing, a client, base, and I'm managing team members and, contributing to other initiatives within the firm, it should be equal. And so what is our philosophy about that? We need to be clear about that. And then back to Renee's point, communicate that, make sure your team members know, because they might not think that I can progress past, I don't know, senior or manager, depending on how we're talking about our, remote team members and or not talking about it, because they just might not know. And so we have to be willing to discuss that and share that and look at, where does that work? So we're going to find out more about that. We've been watching it. We've been seeing firms have success, but we still think there's some hesitation out there.
Yeah, and Tamera, a couple of thoughts on that. First of all, we're going to ask a follow-up question to, does your firm have remote, hybrid, or flex partners? The follow-up question is, how did that come about? Did you hire them that way, or did they take the role and then move out of area or change their situation and you allowed them to go there? So we've been asking that on the team member side, and it'll be interesting to explore, like, what was the genesis of this,
right?
And be able to tell that story to firms. The other thing that you're making me think of, for folks who haven't ever seen the survey report before, it's not just data. And the executive summary that's going to be available to everyone, will be high level, and then it'll have some data points in it. But when you get into the survey report, it's data mixed with thought leadership and ideas. And just where you were, Tamera, like, how do you operationalize this? How do you use this in your firm? What are best practices? What should you be thinking about? So that report is, we think, jam-packed with information and best practices and ideas that are just incredibly impactful for organizations. So I wanted to put that plug in there as you were saying it, because it's not, sometimes you look at survey data and it's just a bunch of numbers. we interpret it. And so that's a really important part of the equation. And your inputs help us interpret it, folks. So thank you in the past for having participated in this survey. We're super grateful for all the participation and interest we get in this. And please, please, please plan to get in there and give us your data again and tell your friends about this, because we definitely want to get our inputs up and learn as much as we can, so that we can continue to provide that great information to firms.
Yeah, that's great. And hopefully you use these ideas to say, how are we doing in this? Do we have proximity bias? What are we doing with return to office? Are we consistent? And there's other questions in there about the 4-day work week.
Yeah.
Studies about that. And what does it mean? First of all, let's define what 4-day work week means, right? Because we, even in our team,
we struggling with it.
We were struggling with it. We were defining it differently. So you have to, say, well, how are we defining that? And then, how are we going to implement it and support it, and what might that look like? And so as that's, kind of gotten some more traction, or at least buzz for sure, we're interested to know, are firms, playing with that? Are they trying it? What does that look like? And so, we're going to ask questions about that. We're going to ask questions about, the client service, and, how are you serving clients remotely? And, how do we continue to further that? And what else are we doing, from a, management and measuring results, and not just time-based? Because that's one of the biggest questions that we get is, how do I, manage and know my people are on track if they're remote? If they're not here, which is proximity bias, by the way, if they're not here, how do I know that they're on track, other than checking the time system? Well, there should be a whole bunch of deliverables that they should be sending back to you. I know if Renee and Caroline are on it, on this Monday, because of what I'm getting back from them, and the, flurry of deliverables, emails, questions, whatever that might be. But we've agreed upon, expectations. So there's the measures side of it, as well, along with other things. And again, hopefully you guys can be thinking about these things and going, I wonder, what's next for us in this area. We're not even talking about any of that. And then you can take that back to your group. Are there any other topics like that you want to add in before we wrap up?
No, just two thoughts on where you were, Tamera. First of all, the 4-day work week is 80% production. That's how we decided to define it. And it means 80% production, but the same pay. And so organizations that have made this work, and HR folks, you've probably heard of this. Josh Berson's talking about it. These big thought leaders are talking about it. There's some organizations that have had success with this, and they're stripping the stuff that doesn't matter out of their organization, so that they can get more done or the same amount done in less time, and still make the same amount of money, still bill the same, I guess, to their clients, and still, as individuals, make the same amount of money. Yeah. So that's, kind of interesting. And then, I was going to say something else about where you were after that, Tamera. So much great information. And, I know what it was. Don't be overwhelmed, because if you are at the end of the spectrum of, we haven't really done a lot here, that's okay too. Because for anyone, we're just asking you to pick a couple of things this year that you want to progress as a leadership team. So whether it's being more on the same page, or whether it's some training and learning so that our team better knows how to manage people in this environment, or, you're picking one of, a few things to progress. So no need to get overwhelmed or feel like you're behind.
Yes. Great point. And that's always what we would advise. Pick a couple of things, whatever piqued your interest, or go, gosh, we could have use some help here, or delve into this conversation. We haven't really talked about it, and go from there. And the 2022 report and summary is available on our website. So you can go get that and read it to see, what we said 2 years ago. And that's another place to say, here's what we've accomplished. Yes, we've handled that. Here's some other places maybe we haven't thought of. And then we'll have the report available at the end of the year, for 2024. So you can always come back to our website for information. Go to our Anytime, Anywhere work page, and you can get access to the different reports, the executive summary, purchase it if you didn't participate, but just participate, and then you'll get it for free. But we've got all kinds of tools and resources out there on these conversations. Same with our blog. we've got a lot of different, writing that we've been doing on these different topics. So sometimes it's helpful to go pull that information, like Renee said, and hear the stories, hear how people are implementing it so that you can then map that to what's happening in your firm, and you can talk to leaders about that. You can talk to team members about that. So we find that to be, super helpful. So don't forget to check that out. There's all kinds of resources out there for you, and you can reach out to us at any time. We'd love to hear from you as you apply these strategies, or if you want to go deeper on something that, we raised today, we would love to have a dialogue with you about it. So you can always reach out to us. Otherwise, we're glad you came with us and joined us on the HR Huddle. We look forward to seeing you next time, and we look forward to continuing to further our, remote and flex work together. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.